Let's sing glory!
Today we're sitting down with Puno Dostres, web designer, digital creative, entrepreneur, and founder of ilovecreatives, People Map, Made with Map, and proud mama of Muad'Dib, the cat. So, your Pinterest boards, they equal having your shit together, right? You got your home decor, the dream office, snazzy style references, maybe a pet board, and obviously the lifestyle that's going to facilitate all of this. Cue Puno. Unbeknownst, you may have heard this one's laughter from a distance, unmistakable once committed to memory, or perhaps you're a little bit more intimate with the comings and goings of the Queen Slashie herself. It's almost been 5 years since Puno first graced my then teenage self screen, looking to YouTube as a form of escape and community, vlogs. I saw someone who, in the light of day, had her shit together in the way that only my Pinterest board spoke of. This chick had her ducks in a row. But the grass is always greener on the other side, and that's not what we're here to preach. Fast forward 5 years, Puno mentions that people looking from the outside in say that the way with which she set up and navigates her life, it almost seems like magic. And it is a little. But the good news is that we don't need to go all the way to Diagon Alley to stock up on the good stuff. You already got it. It's your essence, your zest. Before we get into what you're bringing to the table, it's about whether you want to be sitting at the table at all. God forbid I look at the entirety of my life outside of career and finances and see myself worthy of such. Honestly, this episode was as much of a rabbit hole moment for me as it was in somewhat delivering a cohesive podcast episode. What can I say? It's easy to get lost in people's brains. So there's going to be 2 parts. From Houston suburbs, her time at Activision, spearheading the Call of Duty franchise, to being a keynote speaker at the recent Girl Boss rally, and the further exploration of self via the Meisner acting technique. Puno basically threads together a dialogue through which we question the ecosystems of work-life play and how it should fit around us and not us around it. #sustainable Slashie. This is Slashie This Way with Puno Dostres. A quick heads up. We're dealing with an overseas conversation here, so the audio may reflect this. Coming to you from Los Angeles, California, and Amsterdam, the Netherlands.
Oh, man. Okay, so when I was a kid, I was an only child. In the beginning, my parents they never really talked to each other because it was right before divorce happened. So I just remember having a very quiet, awkward household. It was just always, someone's always edgy or tired or it was really boring. I just remember being incredibly bored when I was growing up. And then when I turned 11, puberty set in, the bleeding, and then I just felt I think it's puberty. But I just was kind of getting tired of Girl Scouts, and I didn't want to do that anymore. And so my parents thought that I was, they actually knew, but I started getting into a lot of trouble, and I was just in retrospect, I think it was just because I was wanting something else to do. I was just so bored because this is pre-internet, man. And it was the most I had on my computer was Encarta and Carmen Sandiego, the CD-ROM, and Minesweeper, which I never, they didn't have really good instructions on the computers, and there wasn't internet, so I didn't know how to play Minesweeper until I got into college. It's a fun game. But yeah, so then I got into trouble, and when I was in trouble, that's when my life really changed, because, I got punished. But I realized at that time, I don't know, I think it was important in getting me to be a very social person, because well, I got in so much trouble that my parents like had me move to my grandparents' place, and this was in Dallas, Texas, Flower Mound specifically. So it's very, very white. I was like one of the only Asians there. Not that that mattered. I was always like comfortable being token, but like there really stood out culturally. I felt like it was. I think there were a lot more Hispanics in my previous school, so it was just a little different. But and it was like really kind of like tough because I was in 8th grade, so everybody like knew each other, 6th and 7th, and so I knew like first day of school that I had to make friends with someone because I didn't want to sit by myself at lunch. And I don't know why I didn't want to do that. I just like, I felt like, oh, that's going to like suck. Cause I think I remember feeling as if I didn't do it then, it'll just keep happening. And I was really afraid of that. So then, there's this girl like the period right before lunch. And, I went up to her and I was just like, hey, how are you doing? I'm new here. And then I just asked her if I could sit with her at lunch, and she was really nice. And yeah, and then like ever since then, I think I just kind of pulled that social Band-Aid off and just said hi and smiled to everyone. Because I was like, that is the only way out of this thing, is just to like be nice. And I feel like that was like, that's how I am now. Like I'm just really unafraid of social interactions. I'm like, I really embrace being curious about people and trying to help them. And I feel like because of that, I think, I don't know, it's kind of addicting. Daniel and I, we were just talking about that, and we're like, is that like a compulsion, or is that just like a nice thing that we're doing?
I mean, you're like a fireball. You're a true people connector.
A fireball. Yeah. But I wasn't like that, though. Like, I remember my dad and my mom, well, my dad specifically, like, making a comment when he saw me with my friends and thinking, like, wow, you're so different in front of your friends. And it was just because it was so quiet at home, you know? So, like, I guess, I don't know if I feel like I had to have always been like this. It was just kind of like fighting like what I was used to or how I grew up. So I don't know. I don't know if it was natural. I don't know. I have no idea. Who knows? What's my gut?
It's almost like you saw that as a tool to just evolve from the situation, to get out of the situation.
Yeah, it was fear.
It was fear-based.
It was all fear-based. I mean, I really was scared. I think like sitting alone at lunch I didn't realize it, and it's actually really interesting to hear me say this right now, but it was something that I just didn't want to do. I didn't want to be used to that. I can eat lunch by myself now. I mean, like, I think it's different, you know, when you're in junior high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess even in that you could say it was your gut. People leaning into the fear and what makes them nervous and still going for it.
Yeah, totally.
Now you're just, from what I see, you are a complete, as you say, Slashie. You're bopping back and forth, doing a bajillion things all at once. Yeah, like, I would say you basically just found a way to capitalize your entire being.
Oh my gosh, that's the goal. I think, but I didn't seek that in the beginning. I like really, I guess like strategically didn't do that, because in the beginning when I first quit my job and Daniel and I were going to start our own business, the business that we created didn't make sense for me to be the face. I mean, one, it was based on travel and like yes, there are people who are travel influencers, but like I don't know, I was just like, I can't do that. And then I really wanted to build a community because I felt like that was just so much more interesting to me to see what other people's perspectives were and how and then like this is the beginning of Instagram, so it was just like really cool to just meet all these people all over the world through like language and visuals. And then the other thing was the aesthetic of map wasn't really me, but at that time I didn't know what like my taste and what my aesthetic was. I didn't feel, it didn't really feel like my skin. And so I thought that was just how you do it. Like, I just thought that's how you make a brand is, you like, and I think at the time that brand was right for that community, but that wasn't necessarily me. So, that car was like, yeah. So I feel like it wasn't until I actually started doing Squarespace freelancing that was when I really exercised aggressively design skills and like tapping into and exploring like, what is my design? What is my aesthetic? And that means like exploring different fonts and buying different fonts and like taking photos and playing around with what my style is and playing with and like trying to create sets and like, you know, it's like all of these things that you have to do to kind of exercise that so that you can really hone in on what your design is. And everybody thinks that I have some like master plan, or not everybody, but I feel like people think that like, wow, you just like really like thought about it. And I just really worked at it. I mean, I just like consistently would try new things and like be relentless about my curiosity and like trying to figure out like, is this me? This seems not as fun, so I don't think that's me. I'm gonna try that other thing. Yeah, and I don't know. I feel like that's why now it seems more natural that I'm like owning or making a business out of like my personality, because I'm like better at it. And I know know more specifically the elements that can make it what it is, because I had to design it. I had to build it. And I always go back to like fonts, because honestly, like fonts are huge. I think like fonts, like the way that I lay out the fonts, the way I use my fonts, like actually defines a bit about like who I am. And so, that's why I don't think it's like this big crazy mystery. Like, it's a few elements and a few assets that are curated and laid out together, and that's kind of how how you look to other people. And I feel like because now I know that, because I have to do that, it's easier to pull the levers and be like, oh, okay, well, and then like start migrating that design thought into like services or products or courses or like whatever elements of my business are. I can start like making that, just integrating that more, because I know how to tap into that now a bit more.
You currently have 3 businesses.
Do I? I guess so.
Yeah.
I mean, okay.
From an outsider perspective, like as a consumer, I see you founded 3 businesses.
Well, all right. So Made with Map is not a business. It makes absolutely no money. In fact, it makes negative dollars because we're still paying for the server. We pivoted Made with Map into People Map, which is the Instagram tool that helped us build that community on Made with Map. And that makes money, but People Map is not really me. Like, I work on it maybe an hour, 2 hours a week, and not because like, oh yeah, living in the dream. Like, it's just because Daniel is taking care of it, and I honestly just haven't put the time to it. Like, every now and then I'll go on a podcast, or I'll do a panel, or I'll teach something, or right now I'm putting together a course for brands on Instagram marketing with Paketo. So like I'll do like those kinds of things to help move it forward, but it's really like dev based. So I've just kind of like I'm not really in that world. And then ilovecreatives, yeah. Like ilovecreatives I'm like way more into. But yeah, it sounds like I have 3 businesses, but really it's 2, but I really work on 1.
Yeah. But, I mean, from like the outer bubble, who would know?
I know. I guess like I don't want to take off Made with Map on my bio, or I don't want to be like, this is gone, because I'm still kind of working on it. So, like I'm still kind of working on it, and it's not dead to me. Like I literally don't have crazy deadlines compared to most people, I think. I used to like believe the startup grind and like feel this pressure of having to meet some pretty crazy goals with, that where I wasn't really willing to do that amount of work for. Like I quit my last job because I was really burnt out. So
yeah, can we like touch on that? Because I feel like now we have a good understanding of kind of where you're at and your perspective on that. But where did you get your start? Like how did this all take root?
So I worked in advertising. Well, okay, I'm going to do this real quick. Yeah. I was in college, marketing, in the business school, didn't like it. This was like pre-Facebook. Ended up doing a side project on my own, learning UX design, even though it did not exist then, but like I felt like that's what I did. Because of that side project, got a job in advertising as a junior art director. They didn't know like what I should do. So I just picked art direction because I kind of do Photoshop, but I didn't really. Spent the next 6 months as a junior art director, like learning Photoshop, Illustrator, like every day, 8 hours. Even when I would go home, I worked even more because I was so behind compared to everybody. Then transferred to LA from Texas, still in advertising, got laid off 2008. That's like,
oh yeah,
the time.
Yeah,
but everybody gets laid off in advertising. So if you're in advertising, like, and you haven't been laid off, like, come on, join the club, And then when I got laid off, did a little bit of freelancing. Then got offered to be a UX designer, which was just beginning. That world was UX and UI and iPhone apps in general just started bubbling. And so I got into that world. My first job was at Activision and Call of Duty. Loved it.
Oh, dang.
So fun. Didn't know anything about gaming, but became a video gamer.
Love Call of Duty.
So fun. Fuck, I love zombies. Oh my god, it's like the best game ever.
Oh my gosh.
And then from there, I ended up getting hired as a UX director, and I built a team of 10, and we were off, and we were trying to build this thing for 20 million Call of Duty fans. And then it just got really super stressful. There's a lot of politics in that company, and I got wrapped up in it, and I was pretty young, and the way that things work, and I realized that I'm the kind of person that doesn't like to explain everything that I'm doing, and I like to take risks, and I like to make mistakes, and I like to work on my mistakes too. And that just wasn't rewarded, or that just wasn't a thing in that culture. And so I found it very frustrating, and it became really apparent when they hired someone who was my direct boss at that time, and we just really butt heads. And so from then I like was so like emotionally drained and like physically exhausted because we were working like 60-hour days. I mean, weeks for like over 3 years. And so I was just like done. I couldn't do it anymore. Like I just was, I don't know. I mean, like maybe I could have, if I wasn't so wrapped up in like, I was so offended. I think that was the problem. Like I shouldn't have taken it, a lot of things so personally, but blah, blah, blah. Ended up quitting and decided that Daniel and I were going to run our own business, but we didn't really know what that was. We ended up like finally taking our honeymoon in Thailand for 5 weeks, came back and we're like, let's do a travel app. And then worked on that. And then once we started working on that, like I like was still a little bit unsure of like, who am I? What am I doing? What do I want to do? I actually have the opportunity now to like try anything. And so I kind of embraced that. And I like tried photography, tried styling, went into freelance for graphic design, UX design, found Squarespace, like really just became a Slashie. And then I think because of that, like somebody else told me this, that it's like an accidental creative. Like I feel like I'm somewhat of an accidental creative because I like tinker and play and do lots of things, but I'm very like aware too of the opportunities that could potentially like unfold. And so I think because of that, like it's just helped me like create this little ecosystem of like businesses. Like if you look at any business I do or any project that I've done, there has been something that has led there. Either it being a side project or it being like a learning or an experience or a conversation from a place that I've been to or a person that introduced me to someone else. Like everything is like very connected, and I think it's just because I go with the flow and like, but at the same time, I really will like dig deep on something that makes sense. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it was the shortest I've ever answered that question.
Rapid fire rundown.
LinkedIn style. Bullet points.
Yeah. Okay, first of all, you worked on Call of Duty. That's insane. I mean, you could have stayed on there longer, but it did not sound like you were happy. Why would you?
I really, really wish that we could have seen the project that we wanted. I wish we could have seen it through because it was so cool, and I feel like it would have like really upped the game for a lot of people. So what would you, if you were the one that was helming it, what do you think was missing? How would you go about forming that strategy then? What do you mean?
In terms of like the teamwork and the company culture you mentioned, like what was lacking in terms of you weren't allowed to actually make mistakes and grow from that?
Yeah. Well, I think the big issue was there wasn't direction from the beginning. And that was like leadership, right? And so the problem was they didn't really know what they wanted, and that's okay, but that doesn't mean someone else is going to figure it out as quickly as you want to pay them. Because like throwing money at something just does not mean that an idea is going to be executed properly or is even going to be the idea. And so I think that's the first thing, is whoever is running the show, whoever's spending the dollars, they need to be very aware of like how that trickles down. And I wish that we could have even talked to him. We never did. Like the person who was telling us what to do. It was like this Wizard of Oz.
You've never seen him either.
Yeah. So how would they know how tough it is when there's all these middle managers that are saying like, oh yeah, we're working on it. Don't worry. We're spending all of your money really well, and we got this. Don't worry. We got it. And it's like,
that's a love disconnect.
We're saying we're not. We don't got it. We're trying, but we don't. Like, we don't know what that person wants. And yeah, so that's like that. And then the second thing is, we did get it. It did take 3 years, but we got it. Like, and we never got to execute it, but we felt so positively that was the direction. And I like believed a lot in esports at the time, but esports just wasn't like really big in the first person shooter world. It was like so much bigger in, like StarCraft and now League of Legends. But I felt like there was a way for it to work. And I think for me, like, I felt like it was missing strategy and it was missing like numbers. And that was the exciting thing about StarCraft, is that you had this data to analyze your game performance, and like it was just like really fun to talk about. And like, I think that's the cool thing about even like fantasy football, even though I'm not in fantasy football, like I understand that the more language you have and the more information you have, the more you can talk about like how to do this differently. And so that's what we were trying to do. That was like our big goal, was to provide information in like a really fun way. And we had this cool interface, but then unfortunately time was like, it was another problem of like throwing money at this situation. And so that's when they hired all these new people and fired other people because they weren't like it was really a shame when one of our bosses got fired, because I was like, it's not his fault. Like I was just like, it's not his fault. He learned so much from like that year. Why does he have to get punished, for it? If anything, he is the number one person for this job again. Like, he's the person that's going to be able.
He's been in the trenches,
understand, what our weaknesses are, and where like the direction that we can keep going. And so everybody's really bummed when he got fired, and like everybody at the morale was like really down, because now you're like, well, can't make mistakes. Just do what they say, because you're gonna get punished for it. And I didn't believe that, and neither did my team. We were like, fuck no. And so we really butted heads with the new leadership that they brought in, because that was their whole role, was like, get these like kids in order. And it's like, it's just like we were just still learning. So, and then from then, like, I mean, there's not much you can do. There's not much you can do when the team isn't on the same page. There's just like, it's just chaos, and like, no matter how much money you throw at someone, because Call of Duty had a lot of money, and I quit before I would get my bonus check, which was like 40 grand. Like, it's crazy. It's like, but like, it was just too much. It was just like, I was like crying at a bar at 11 p.m. and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you stepped out for you.
I had to.
Yeah.
Because I was like shaking at work. Like, what the fuck is that? That's not healthy.
No. Your adrenals are just like on an all-time high.
Yeah, my adrenals needed to email me and be like, yo, homie.
Calm down.
Calm down, girl. You need to go. But I didn't want to go because our team was sick. Like, I got to build like this fantastic unicorn team, and I call them unicorns because everybody was an autodidact. They were self-taught. They were autonomous. They knew they didn't like structure. They wanted to own their own product, but they were also like really fun and good friends. And so it was like, I didn't want to leave that, because it was like, damn it. And we all gelled, and we all like designed similarly. So it was just like such a good group, and I didn't want to like lose that, but I just, there wasn't much more I could do.
It sounds like there's so many
sad.
tools that you could. Yeah, it sounds really sad.
I know.
But I mean, the tools that you gained from that as well must have been as unfortunate as the experience was.
Well, I think that I feel like for someone like me specifically, I am such an optimistic person, and I'm such a bulldozer in a sense that I almost have to be like dragged down through the dirt in order for me to like really give up on something. So I think I learned that I don't need to be that person. Like, okay, Puno, let's nip this in the bud before it gets bad. So I like really practice self-awareness and try not to like it's not that I don't work hard anymore. I still work hard. I'm just very self-aware of anything that's like emotionally draining me and not making me pumped, you know?
That's where you're actually living and not surviving now.
True. That's a great way. That's a great analogy.
Because so many of us, we're just surviving. No one is necessarily living. And when we correlate work to making a living, it's way too connected to, it's just facilitating like this circle of survival mode. Always in the survival mode. We were here to discuss the acting class. The acting class you're taking. Yeah, I saw your videos on that, and you being extremely open, extremely raw on camera, totally upfront. I had to get you on the podcast. So
I'm glad that you saw that, because I really was.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't really want to turn this on.
Either this acting class is really, really good.
Yeah.
Or, if you could intro exactly what this acting class is to begin with.
Sure. Yes. My pleasure. Okay, so it's the Meisner technique, which, like, there's a few acting techniques. One of them that everybody's probably familiar with is method acting. And then there's Meisner. And Meisner is, well, the best way to explain it is method is like becoming that person, feeling the pain, like living the pain. Whereas Meisner is about not necessarily re-scratching your scabs, if you will, but it's more like imagining creatively,
channeling
and like
them?
and like tapping into your experiences, but not necessarily having to like relive any emotional trauma. So like if you wanted to be sad, you can think about, you know, your parents being sick or something like that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are, you know, like it's like just what are those emotions, and feel those emotions, but you don't have to like you don't have to be like, okay, what trauma in my life has happened and how can I tap into that?
Yeah.
And so I took the class, and like I was the only person who wasn't an actor. I was just like the girl who's taking it for fun. But I didn't really say that, like, because it was very apparent that everybody there wanted to be an actress or actor. And so I just didn't want to be that person that would be perceived as like not taking it seriously. We had a really cool energy in the class, and I think like when you have that culture, it's super special, and I don't want to like ruin it, and I want to like help it, because then it's going to make that experience in that class just way more interesting and way more valuable for me. So kind of like kept that to myself, but I learned so much about myself, and about like just like the little things that I do. So like you have this one exercise, and if you've seen Barry, they do a glimpse of it. It's like a repetition exercise, but essentially you make these observations about people and then you repeat it. And in these exercises, your teacher, our acting teacher, my acting teacher, Lisa, would like stop you and then say, big note, Puno or like big note, whoever. And then she would kind of tell you something about yourself. Like, do you notice that you're rocking back and forth? Do you notice that you're like, you just made a joke. You just kept making jokes and kept like being goofy. And she's not like, you know, making fun of you or like, she's just observing what you do. And the whole point, which I think is really smart, is that, you know, in acting, you're trying to like control your human behavior more. And so in order to do that, you need to be really self-aware of like what you're doing. And I thought that like, one, she would like dig into, you know, oh, for me specifically, I would laugh or I would just like joke if someone looked like they couldn't think of something to say. I would just like, I'd make a joke. And she said, you know, you're a caretaker. Like you constantly will try to swoop in and make it all less awkward. She's like, can you just sit in that awkwardness? Like, can you just let them like do their thing? Like, I'm going to do that for them. You just don't worry about them. And so I was like, oh my God. And like, I kept getting that note over and over again. I was like a caretaker. I kept taking care of people. And she's like, just focus on you for once, you know, like just, and I was like, oh my God. And then like, I was like, ah. But what is so much more interesting in this exercise and this like way of doing it versus therapy is that you get to almost train and drill yourself out of your habits with like strangers in life versus, you know, going, I mean, I think therapy is great for lots of reasons, but like in terms of practicing human behavior and like, you know, the habits that you've formed, I feel like this was such a good lab to do that because you would just be like, all right, I'm just going to drill this out. And then she'd call you out and then you just try it again. And then she'd call you out and you just try it again. And it's like, it was almost athletic in a sense. So I really appreciated that. And like, I feel like I learned so much about, like just my natural instincts, good or bad or whatever, just the natural ones, and the ones that I tend to not bubble up immediately. And so at the end of the class, we were allowed to like continue forward and take the next one. And it was so weird because like my teacher really ended up like, I mean, she loves everyone, but she was just like so surprised by me because I mean, maybe it's because I look really young, but I'm like 35, so I was probably one of the oldest in the class.
I was shocked as well when it was your birthday recently, and I was like, what? Puno? No.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think because, like, maybe, I don't know, I feel like I was like this when I was younger, but maybe not. But yeah, she was just like, I'm so surprised you don't want to act. Like, you don't want to be an actress. And it's not that I don't want to be an actress. It's like, I just know how much work it is to actually, like, do it the way that I would want to do it. Like, I have some friends that are actors, and I get the grind. And, like, I don't know if I really want to do it that way. So it was really tough because even today I'm like, man, I really wish like I'll get DMs from some of the classmates and I'll just be like, damn it, I wish I was going, but it was just such a huge time commitment for me, and I don't know, I feel like I can go back to it at some point, but Lisa called me out and she's like, you're probably not, and I was like, I don't know. I need to build ilovecreatives.
There's like a season for everything.
Yeah, exactly.
You were basically called out on your safety net, which is to make everyone kind of feel situated that they're okay and to smooth out that awkwardness. Where do you think that, I mean, would you say that maybe almost stems from, you have siblings, but they're graduating high school?
One of them is 14, and the other one's in junior high, the other one is in high school. But she's not graduating anytime soon. I think she's got like 2 years or 3 years left. Yeah.
Where do you think that stemmed from, though?
Like caretaking?
Yeah.
Ugh, next episode. I have no idea. I think...
Your Call of Duty days?
Oh my, I mean, I think I was already caretaking. You know, like that was like... Maybe that was. Or maybe that was the beginning of it.
Maybe when you go back to the acting class, this is step 2.
I know. I think this goes back to... I am naturally, and even back then, I'm a very curious person. And I like to kind of see like how things work. And I like to like... I'm a rebel in the sense that I like to see if there's other ways to do things. I'm just very curious. And I feel like that's when like Daniel and I were talking about our compulsiveness to like answer a question. I don't even know is it like being helpful, or is it like there's a question that's unanswered and I want to know, or is it for me, like when I hear something that I don't know the answer to, I'm like, that's interesting. Like, I think I want to know the answer to that too.
Yeah.
And I feel like I just go and find it. And then people are like, wow, you're so helpful. And I'm like, yeah, but I also was curious too. I was like, I wonder how that works. So I don't know. I feel like I've always been like that in the beginning when I was really young. I don't think I got to exercise that a lot because I was in solitary confinement in the suburbs. But I found it in different ways. You know, like even just like snooping around the house, you know, and looking at all these things. And like, I don't know. I like little curious Puno.
I mean, yeah, now you're in user experience as well. Brands come to you if you're doing a website. They kind of give you a design brief, and it's how do I kind of smooth out the flaws, and like you bring it all together in like seamless experience. You want to cater towards the user and make sure there's no bumps in the road.
Yeah, and we talk about this in my Squarespace design course. Like we have this accountability group, and one of the things that we talked about was like community and like having genuine like connections with people. And I feel like a lot of that for me, especially like on something like Instagram, just online and in general, or even in person too, I find that I have the most genuine connections when I'm like really curious and helpful. I think that the conversations just tend to be more interesting and tend to go beyond the superficial when I just ask questions and then I try to help that person, like, you know, understand what that problem is or what the solution can be, or hear how they've come to that solution. Yeah. So like I'm like in the class, I've been trying to tell people like, use the Slack community as like a lab, like as another supplementary lesson in solving other people's problems, because once you get into client services, that is essentially the job. And, you know, even if you don't just do client services, being a creative, that is the job. Like the job is to figure out someone's problem, whether it's your customer or your client or yourself, and like continuously solving that problem. And it's like, you can practice that just every day, you know, you don't just always have to be super observational in your conversation in Instagram, you know, like it can always go a little further if you're just a little bit more curious.
Because there's an entire world within each person. And when the dialogue you hear so often, when someone you're talking to, someone always relates back to you with their own situation, and then it kind of takes away from what that other person said. And say they came to you, I also find that this is why some people a lot of my friends say they go to therapy for this reason, because when they're around friends or family and they're talking about something they're having difficulty with, and the other person always counters with, oh, when I was going through this, and they bring up their own experience, and it leaves someone feeling like they haven't been heard and like they haven't been given space to. And so you aren't, say, 100% there for that person. It's always kind of contracting with, this was my experience. I found when you actually, even in demanding someone to give you that space and be there fully for you, it makes a world of difference when you don't expect that from a person, and then you're kind of left with this almost this residual resentment. And it's like, wow, when we just ask someone, and when we actually are present there for someone, even when we take that step further to not have to be asked by someone, there is, so, as you said, there's so much that opens up in terms of human connection and actually giving instead of constantly being on the receiving end.
I know. I feel like, I think it's just interesting how some people have completely different experiences on Instagram. Like, there is like that study about mental illness, mental health with Instagram, and I need to really look into the numbers of this, but essentially it was saying that the people who comment more on Instagram tend to have a better mental health or experience on the platform than passively like scrolling through. And I'm like, that makes so much sense though, you know? Of course.
I love Instagram. There's not a single person I follow who I don't love. I don't know how many people I follow at this point, but I keep coming across so many amazing people. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you. Like, I love you. I need you in my life. I need to. And I'm like screenshotting everyone's account and like deep diving and rabbit holing and making lists and lists.
Yeah, I think you naturally at a very, I don't know, I feel like some people just are really good at finding who their people are, and like, I don't know, what do you think? Do you think it's because like you knew who you were, or is it because you knew what you were somewhat looking for? Or maybe it's a combination of both.
I'd say it was a combination of both. If you're kind of expanding as a person, and everyone is always going to have a different answer to this when it comes to, I feel like I know myself now, or I don't know myself at all, in terms of I've always had a pretty good sense of self, but it's also the way someone makes you feel, maybe separate from the things you're interested in. It's like, I don't have to say love the way all the songs by this one artist sounds, or even his kind of vibe aesthetic itself, but if there's one song in his album, then like I will listen to that on repeat.
Yeah. But some people though,
I mean, what do you find?
Oh, I mean, I feel like I'm like you. I think I'm pretty, like, I like to look at lots of different things, and I'm pretty self-aware, like, when it's like, oh, why am I looking at this, you know? I think that helps being busy. It's like, you're just like, I don't have time for this. But a cute cat, all right, let's scroll through a couple of those.
Oh, we can see how that manifested.
You know, I gotta get my research in.
Yeah.
For some, I like went in this group of where we were talking about like everybody's experience with Instagram, and there's just so many people that I think there's two sides of it that gets really unhealthy, and one of them is what you kind of touched on in the beginning, where like you were talking about trying not to like take Instagram so seriously and like be so planned and structured about it. And I get that. I can see how that can very quickly like make it not fun, or make it feel like it's a job, and then it's more about quantity than it is quality. I think there is just something to consistency, but like I totally also get, you know, what happens because of that too. But I think that like for people who have a business, and this is me too, like even with I Love Creatives, you know, marketing our company through Instagram it's just so much cheaper at the end of the day than doing like most other kinds of advertising or things. So, and it's just like something that you get to really like create, but I do feel like a lot of business owners resent it because they feel like they have to like just do it, and it's just, oh, I'm doing it, and then like they're too tired to like think of something interesting about it and change it up. It's like, oh, it's another bar of soap, oh, it's another bar of soap, or whatever. And like, I don't know what else to say about that, because it's like, well, if you're not changing anything about that situation, of course it's going to feel like a grind, you know? And I respect that it's like you're tired, and I understand that it's like tough to get out of that, but like there's something's got to give. We've got to brainstorm some solution, you know, because Instagram is such a great tool to create a community, and you know, and you're good at it somewhat, but it's just like you haven't figured out that thing. And like, I think that's like the part I'm trying to think of different ways that people can like get out of that hump and like really have fun with it again. Because it's a shame, you know, like to like feel such dread with something that could be potentially so fulfilling. And then the other side of it is like people who, I think it's like people who don't really know who they are and are going down the wrong rabbit holes. Yeah. You know, like, I feel like those people are just like, you know, like looking at a lot of celebrity stuff, or I don't know. It's just like, they're just in this world, and it's like, they know that they don't like it, but they don't know what else, I guess. These are like two different worlds that I'm really so curious about. I'm like trying to figure out how do you get out of that, you know? Because it would really make everybody so much more, have so much more fun.
I'm right there with you. I'm really curious as to why I really wanted to have you on Guts and Glory, and like the basis to Guts and Glory as well. It's people who don't, as you said, necessarily know themselves. Where does that even stem from? Are we being given the space in our childhood to actually explore? Are we still being given the space today as adults to play? And it's like, okay, what do our education system look like? I mean, I remember getting, you know, we called the talk on, say, the woman's reproductive system, and like the boys were taken away from the girls, and the girls would be taken to like this room, and you know, we'd be like, okay, 5 bullet points on what you're going to go through, and that's it. And then you find yourself out of high school, and they never touched on taxes. And it's like all these kind of basic tools that you kind of need as a person, we don't cover that. But at the same time, we're just going to degrade everything about the creative aspect of being human as well, and put all the importance and all the funding, especially within, like, say, the French education system and the British education system and international baccalaureate, the ones that I was a part of. All the funding was going towards your full worth is valued if you are good in math, if you are good in one of the sciences. So as a basis, where are people really being established from childhood onwards, and how is this manifesting in ways as they are adults, and how is this being seen in terms of businesses and across industries? And that's where it's so cool, because everyone's slowing down now. We have to wake up. We can't keep going like this. People aren't burning out at 45 anymore. Like, they're done at age 25. And you've got older generations who are so stingy sometimes. Like, you young ones, like, there was so many less opportunities when we were your age. There was just one set way of doing it, and now it's like, yeah, there may be a lot more people who are a lot more sensitive, but
I think you're right. It is that privilege of being able to be sensitive, and I don't think that that's wrong. But like, yes,
No.
like we definitely have the privilege of being sensitive, and like
we need it.
I think that yeah, and the only reason why we're so frustrated is because we know that there is a better way. Like, it's not rocket science, you know? It's just like we weren't set up. So to your point, the time that it's going to take for us to figure it out might be a long time, you know? Like I'm actually like putting together a talk at Girl Boss Rally, and my talk is kind of it's a bait and switch because, well, they named it like how to start your side hustle with a full-time job. But I personally have a problem with the word side hustle just because it has the word hustle in it, and I'm like not trying to do this to burn myself out, you know? And I feel like that's something that I like have been recently embracing a lot more, is just like a lifestyle business, really. Like, everybody talks about work-life balance, and it's like, well, you know, like, to me, most of my decisions are rooted in my business on how I want to live. And like, yes, that includes money. And yes, that sometimes includes employees. Like, just because you want a lifestyle business doesn't mean you don't, you know, you can't have a large business and make a lot of money. I think that the mentality and the mindset is just completely different. But, you know, there's like other things that I have to do in my mind that like get me to be, what you were saying about playing. I have to embrace that, that long haul, and just embrace slow growth, because, there really isn't any shortcuts to kind of like figuring out who you are. And I wouldn't want to give myself the shortcut of that, because I get all these cool stories to tell. And all, like my friend Maceo and I, we always say we love doing things the hard way because we get a lot of material.
Good stories to tell the kids.
Yeah, it's true though. It's just like it's just such a more interesting way to go about things, and like, yeah. So I think that you're right. Like, if maybe in school we were taught how to learn, like how to solve problems, like really breaking down the process. And we do this in our Squarespace design course, like the accountability group. We like break down, you know, in the beginning, there's a gap between what your taste is and what your skill is. And like Ira Glass talks about this a lot. And it's, you're like trying to close that gap constantly. And it's so frustrating. That is like the most frustrating period of time. But it's like one of those things that you have to do at least like once really hard. Like, it needs to suck, and then you'll know you're like how much you can take. You know, you're just like, oh, I mean, that was hard, but okay, like I understand now the feeling of putting some time in to solve a problem. And like all of those things are not being taught in school. Like, nobody's like breaking down how to learn, and like the frustrations and the emotions and the time that it takes to do those kinds of things. Because like memorizing versus like figuring out your own problems or figuring out other people's problems is a totally different beast. And I feel like if everyone knew how to, if like people understood the process of learning and the process of problem solving and like all of the emotions that come with it, like they would just be more prepared to do it more often for themselves and like, you know, play more and ride that frustration, because that's like part of it. But no one teaches that.
Yeah.
Where do they teach that stuff?
I'd love to be a part of the education system in some way. There are a lot of like initiatives that are developing into this space, and I think they're called Spoon. And I'm not sure what school. I think it's campuses across the U.S. that have signed up with them where they are offering their classes on campus, but they're not a part of the actual school. They're just facilitating Spoon as a part of like the curriculum. This is insane that a third party is being able to come into your space, and you are giving space that if, say, students within I think it's within gut microbiome and soil turnover, and even going into the diversity within agriculture, that, you know, there are people who are going to be eating a lot of different things and not just corn, and giving opportunities to wider communities. And it speaks to so much more than, this is how you make a chicken noodle soup. Just looking at how like education is kind of expanding and the way it's structured like that. And we're looking at biomimicry as well. We're actually realizing we're a part of nature and looking at nature and seeing the formulas within nature. And how does competition take form in nature? And how are we implementing competition into our own lives? And it's like competition in nature is nowhere, it doesn't look the same as it does the way we are competitive, and how we set our businesses up. It's not sustainable when you look at nature's model of what is long-term sustainable and what is going to bring around profit.
Interesting. I've never heard of that term before.
What are your thoughts on people have all their eggs in one basket, and it's like Instagram? I'd love to know your perspective on how you see social media evolving.
Oof. I definitely think that with Instagram, shopping on Instagram, I think it is going to be the next, like, marketplace. So people might not even have a Shopify website anymore. Like, they might just be on Instagram. You know? I think that's totally possible. Because the only thing that's, like, stopping it at this point is payment processing and inventory management and those kinds of things. But otherwise, like, it's the platform that the entire market is on. And so, as, like, a business owner, why wouldn't you want to be closer to that? And I get it, yes, for sure. You want to get people's email addresses so that you can contact them on your own without having to pay for it. But when you're first starting, you know, that's not your goal. Your goal is to figure out if you are able to create content that speaks to the community that you're trying to grow. And if it does, then the next step is converting them into like lifetime customers, and by getting their email addresses and all that stuff. And that's when you can like go that route. But when you're starting in the beginning and you have under 10,000 followers, you just need to make sure that you understand your content ecosystem and like understand what your cadence is, and see if you're really like, if you're retaining people's attention, you know?
Yep.
I would just focus on that first, and then don't even worry about Instagram disappearing or whatever new app is going to come up, because it's just like, it takes forever for those things to like really change. And what I mean by forever, it's like a year, but still, you know, you could do a lot of damage in a year.
And it's like, if people are wanting to do, if they're really looking to go fast, go hard, then there's always third-party warehouse management. I think there's already 2 that are easily integratable with Instagram. I know this one lettering artist who already uses Instagram, and she's like, I can get immediate feedback from my followers, and, you know, they tap it, She has third-party inventory that manages everything, keeps everything for her. They process it. It leads directly through from her Instagram to a store that she set up with them. So it's like she doesn't even have to bother with that anymore.
Easy. I love it. Have you read the book Company of One?
No. Company of One.
Yeah. It's like the way that it's the way that I think. And I feel like I'm just so glad Paul Jarvis wrote it, because I was like, people need to hear this. This is Puno Dostres, and this is Guts and Glory signing off.
This was Slashie This Way with Puno Dostres. Refer to the show notes to further get to know our guest. Share your thoughts and show us some love by subscribing or get in touch to be featured on the podcast. Released every other Monday. Thanks for lending us an ear. Passing on the mic.